Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something quite personal, actually, a reflection sparked by a passage from the book of Numbers.
That's right. We have this blog entry from April 27th, 2025. The title's in Chinese, but it translates roughly to remembering and obeying all of God's words and commands at all times. It's called Rodgery's Prayer Diary.
And it really digs into some core themes, doesn't it? Obedience, remembrance, and how you actually live out guiding principles day to day.
Exactly. And what's really interesting, I think, is how it focuses on a specific instruction about tassels. Tassels with blue cords on garments. Seems small, maybe.
Yeah, but the reflection pulls out so much from it. So our mission here is to unpack those insights, see what this tells us about living maybe a more mindful, a more dedicated life.
Well put. And the reflection uses two key parts of that Numbers passage to explore this.
Right. First, there's this story about a man gathering wood on the Sabbath day.
Mm-hmm.
And second, this specific command about the tassels and the blue cord.
So let's start with the first one, the man gathering wood.
Okay, so the blog revisits this event. It's happening in the wilderness. Israelites find a guy collecting wood on the Sabbath.
And we need to remember what the Sabbath actually meant. It wasn't just, a day off work like we think of it.
No, not at all. It was divinely ordered, set apart for rest, for devotion, a total break from the usual routine.
Yeah, even things you might think are necessary, like getting wood for a cooking fire. Nope. Prohibited.
You had to prepare everything the day before so the Sabbath could be totally focused.
And what's really striking, and the blog points this out too, is the Israelites' reaction. They find this man. Well, the law apparently didn't spell out the exact punishment for this specific act. So they didn't just react on the spot.
Yeah.
They brought him to Moses and Aaron, the whole community, basically.
Which shows a real carefulness, doesn't it?
Right.
They wanted to get it right, seeking divine guidance instead of just deciding themselves.
Precisely. Conscientiousness, which, then leads to the judgment from God.
And it's stark. God commands he be stoned to death outside the camp.
Yeah, pretty severe. And the blog offers quite a symbolic interpretation of that.
What does it suggest?
Well, the reflection sees this act putting the man to death as representing something internal, like the need to put to death your own will when it clashes with God's commands, or maybe more broadly, your core principles.
So the parts of you that resist that rest, that resist being aligned.
Exactly. The parts that hinder that rest in God, as the blog puts it. It's about maintaining spiritual purity or integrity, maybe within the community or even within yourself.
Wow. That definitely makes you think, doesn't it? About those times you prioritize your own, impulses or immediate wants over deeper commitments.
It forces a reflection on those internal battles, absolutely, and the importance of aligning what you do with what you believe.
Okay, so that whole incident kind of sets a serious tone.
It does, and it leads right into the second part the blog focuses on, this commandment about tassels and blue cords.
Right, Numbers 15, verses 38 and 39. After the wood gathering story, God tells the Israelites, "Make tassels on the corners of your garments for all generations, and put a blue cord on each tassel."
Seems very specific. Almost odd, maybe, to our modern ears, but the blog really unpacks the symbolism.
So what do the tassels and cords represent, according to the reflection?
Okay, so the tassels themselves, the word used is hith, were these fringes on the edge of their clothes. Their outer garments were often these big, square cloths, right?
Got it. Fringes.
And the blue cord, blue, is often seen as symbolizing heaven. The divine is the term used. Heavenly.
Okay, so heavenly fringes.
Well, and the cord aspect also suggests binding or constraint, like something holding you, reminding you.
Ah, so it's not just decoration. It had a job to do.
A very specific job. The text says, look at it, remember all the Lord's commands, and don't follow your own heart and your own eyes.
Which the text adds they were prone to do. Esja, not following their own desires and lustful eyes.
Right. Like you usually do, basically. Ouch.
Yeah, pretty blunt. So the tassels were a constant visual check against those impulses.
And the blog draws this really interesting parallel. It likens that blue cord, that heavenly constraint, to the illumination and constraint of the Holy Spirit.
Okay, how does that work?
The idea is that looking at the tassels spiritually is like constantly being aware of that divine guidance. It's not just seeing with your eyes, but perceiving with your spirit.
And the blog breaks this down further, right, into steps for obeying.
Yes. 3 key steps highlighted in the reflection: seeing, remembering, and obeying. The Chinese terms are "yu" here. "Yu."
So seeing is like That spiritual awareness you just mentioned,
Yeah.
recognizing the Spirit's reminders.
Exactly. Discerning that inner nudge. Then remembering isn't just recalling facts, but actively meditating on God's words, mulling them over, letting them guide you in everything.
Receiving guidance.
Right. And finally, obeying is the crucial part. Actually doing it. Immediately submitting to that guidance, putting the commands into practice, not just thinking about it.
It's a whole cycle. Perceive, reflect, act.
Precisely. And the blog really emphasizes that this process is key to resisting those inner pulls, the I, the selfish desires, and the lust of the eyes, the things we see and want immediately.
So you can live according to God's commands, not just your own whims.
That's the idea. It's about consciously choosing that alignment, which brings us to the ultimate purpose behind all this.
Okay, what's the bigger picture here?
Well, verse 40 in Numbers 15 states the goal. So you shall remember and do all my commandments and be holy to your God.
Holy. That's a big word. How does the blog understand that?
The reflection interprets holiness, Dale, as being set apart from the world and dedicated to God.
So it's not just about rule following, it's about a whole orientation of life.
Yes. This practice of seeing, remembering, obeying, it's the pathway to achieving that state of holiness, of allowing God, or your guiding principles, let's say, to really rule in your life. Thoughts, words, actions, everything.
That really makes me pause. For you listening, it's like asking, what are our tassels? What are our blue cords? You know, the things, maybe tangible, maybe not, that help us stay focused on what we say is most important.
That's a great question, and it's exactly where the blog goes next, looking at the modern application.
Because life today is, well, it's busy, distracting.
Absolutely. The blogger makes that exact point. Just like the Israelites in the wilderness, we can so easily forget our principles amid the rush of home, work, community stuff. We end up just following our own desires.
Easy to do.
Very easy. So the call, as the blog frames it, is to kind of metaphorically wear the tassel of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Meaning to constantly remember and obey that divine guidance, that inner compass, and actively resist those worldly desires that pull us off track.
And the blog acknowledges this isn't simple, right? There's an internal struggle.
Oh, definitely. It mentions our own weakness, how easy it is to stray. It's realistic about the challenge.
So how does the blogger suggest we do this, practically?
Well, they share their own approach. They liken their daily spiritual practices, things like devotional readings, prayer, reflection, to attaching that spiritual blue cord each day.
Ah, so those routines become the reminder system.
Exactly. They help remember, they provide illumination or clarity, which then leads to meditating on that guidance and finding the strength to actually live it out day to day.
Like building a habit of awareness.
Yes. And the blogger even mentions sharing these disciplines with others, kind of spreading the practice.
So that theme keeps coming back. Daily reflection. That's our modern blue cord.
It seems to be the core idea, that constant reminder, that source of illumination, helps us think more deeply, meditate on guidance, and ultimately live a more dedicated life.
And the purpose is clear. Resist the immediate wants, build spiritual muscle.
Obey those core commands or principles, and be consecrated, dedicated to God, allowing that divine influence in every part of life.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, it feels like the main takeaways are really about that active nature of commitment. It's not passive.
No, definitely not. The need to actively remember, actively obey. The Sabbath story shows the seriousness, and the tassel command gives a mechanism, a symbol for how to remember.
And the importance of reminders, whether they're physical things we set up or mental habits, routines like the blogger described, they help keep us aligned.
And it all points toward living with more intention, more focus, really grounding ourselves in what matters most rather than just drifting.
Which leads to, I guess, a final thought for you listening, building on what the blogger reflected on.
Consider what your own blue cords or tassels could be, tangible or intangible. What routines, what reminders, what mental checks could you weave into your life to keep you mindful of and faithful to whatever principles you hold as truly important?
Yeah, and maybe ask, how do you move beyond just knowing what's important? How do you actively put that into practice, day in, day out, especially when your own impulses or just the noise of the world are pulling you in a different direction? Something to think about.